On our broadcast tonight, the country's fiscal plans a step closer to being passed.
Plus, the nation's chief shedding light on the F&M's plans for a value-added tax.
The union makes certain demands of Leslie Miller, but he says he's not moving. This after paying a hefty sum of money for an outstanding bill. I'm Clint Watson. The story's ahead.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This portion of the news brought to you by BTC Every Day.
The 2014-2015 fiscal budget one step closer to being passed as the nation's leader wrapped up the debate in Parliament last night. Good evening, Bahamas. I'm Altaviz Munnings.
And I'm Andrew Knowles. Thanks so much for joining us on the Bahamas Tonight. Parliamentarians returned to the House of Assembly this morning to comb through each of the head items in the budget before it is passed. In it, a myriad of reforms to ensure fiscal redress and a planned approach to help decrease spending.
Well, also as a part of the new financial roadmap is 39 new projects valued at about $5 billion. But last night, Prime Minister Perry Christie touched on a wide range of points in his contribution. Chief among them, gaming reform and the issue of value-added tax. Candido
Knowles has been following parliamentary proceedings and tells us tonight that the nation's leader made some very interesting pronouncements about how VAT and customs duties will coexist.
Despite concerns about double taxation with the introduction of value-added tax, Prime Minister Perry Christie told Parliament last night that this is simply not the case. In fact, the nation's leader announced that customs duties will be adjusted to allow both taxes to coexist without burdening Bahamians. And even when the tax does come on stream, Mr. Christie said his government made sure there was money allocated in this budget for the enhancement of social safety net programs. While Bahamians might be afraid of VAT's introduction at 7.5%, the inevitable tax is one the Prime Minister says is crucial to his government's plan for growing the economy.
As we finalize the VAT bill and settle on the list of exemptions from VAT, there will be occasion to examine selective customs and excise reductions that are justifiable and appropriate. We expect the new VAT, with a start date of January 1st, 2015, to generate added revenue in 2014-15 on the order of 1.5% of GDP. I explained as well that we expect on a very cautious and conservative basis and for prudent fiscal planning purposes to garner some 0.14% of GDP in revenue from the web shop.
And with mounting criticisms about his government's proposed fiscal plan, which stands at nearly $2 billion, the Prime Minister held steadfast to the notion that this is in fact the best budget for the country at this time, with reforms in a wide range of areas.
Mr. Speaker, in the final year of our previous mandate, financial year 2006-07, my government left a recurrent expenditure at a level of 17.4% of GDP. The administration that succeeded us in 2007 then proceeded to inflate the level of recurrent expenditure so blatantly that its rate soared relative to the size of the economy. That is a clear prescription for fiscal disaster, as it is ultimately the size of one's economy that dictates the level of revenue that will be available to pay for public expenditure.
Despite questions from former F&M Finance Minister Sir William Allen about government's commitment and ability to contain spending, Prime Minister Christie said it is simply incomprehensible how the former minister logically drew his conclusions upon an objective reading of the budget. Here's how the Prime Minister clarified his government's plan for spending.
The numerous and varied reforms to expenditure control that we have implemented and which I set out in detail in the budget communication will continue to bear fruit as we move ahead. On the basis of our dogged pursuit of our spending discipline, we expect the rate of recurrent expenditure to continue to decline relative to the size of the economy. And Mr. Speaker, we're projecting by 2016-17, recurrent expenditure is expected to represent some 19.6% of GDP.
And with that clarification, the Prime Minister said if one wishes to measure the fiscal responsibility of his government, one only needs to view the facts, which he said are clearly visible. Candido Knowles, ZNS Network News.
Well, things got a bit heated during the Prime Minister's wrap-up yesterday as he called opposition members out for more or less being hypocritical. The Prime Minister was responding to the stance taken by opposition Free National Movement to vote against the upcoming budget because of value-added tax, among other things. The Prime Minister said when he came to office, Ministry of Finance officials were already preparing for the introduction of value-added tax at an initial rate of 15%. Additionally, the Prime Minister went on to say that discussions were had relative to VAT at the cabinet level, and that's when Long Island MP Loretta Butler Turner got up on a point of order, saying that never happened. The Prime Minister, in turn, suggested Mrs. Butler Turner had no clue of what was going on in her government.
The Prime Minister of the Bahamas, the member for Centerville, said, I had no idea. That is a blatant untruth. We never dealt with that. We never dealt with that.
Mr. Speaker, it is a remarkable demonstration of an inability to understand governance, to understand that ministers have the courage of defining the financial policy of a country, that the International Monetary Fund in 2011 in a report indicated that they had reported this recommendation to the Bahamas government, who was the FNM at the time, and the FNM had agreed.
Members.
In other news this evening, the non-payment of outstanding electricity bills by the BEC chairman's family business sparking unions to call for his resignation or face possible consequences. A payment of $100,000 was made yesterday on the hefty bill, and we're told that arrangements were made to pay the balance. Now, the monies were paid after media reports revealed that nearly $250,000 was owed. We get that story tonight from Clint Watson.
BEC Chairman Leslie Miller strongly believes the attacks lodged against his business's outstanding debt is personal and being fueled by the corporation's unions, mainly due to his stance against company overtime. He revealed his daughter, who manages his business affairs, wasted no time applying a $100,000 payment to BEC when the issue came to light in the media this week.
I will continue to be steadfast in our deliberation of bringing down the cost of electricity for the Bahamian people and taking this burden off their backs. That's what it's all about. It's not about who pays what bill. We have some institutions in this country right now today, BEC in excess of $15 million, but we don't go and turn the lights off because that affects the lives of thousands of Bahamians. So you sit and work with them and say, listen, what is the best you can do at these difficult times? Because you know that they have the ability to pay the bill. So you work with them, and that's what happens there. It's a normal thing. There's no preference given to anyone.
And despite Mr. Miller's attempt to eradicate his large bill, unions at the corporation still feel he should resign.
If you're not leading by example, you're not fit to lead.
That's President of BEC's Managers Union, Clinton Minnis, who says they've requested a meeting with the Deputy Prime Minister, Chairman, Board of Directors, Executive Management, and the union to bring this and other issues emanating from the corporation to a resolution.
And if we don't have a meeting by Saturday night, 12 o'clock, we have information at our disposal, and we're going to start asking some questions that may implicate some other people if we don't get results.
And since that large payment was made, another issue has surfaced. President of the Bahamas Electrical Workers Union, Paul Maynard, says cashiers are reportedly now being questioned for accepting the transaction.
We ain't tolerating them disciplining our cashiers for taking the cash money. You know, our cashiers are there to do the job. However people bring the payment, whether it's cash or whatever, they are there to take it.
Are you saying that Mr. Miller's bill was paid off with cash?
That's what I understand.
ZNS News has been informed by an inside source in management at both businesses that it is not unusual in their view to make a cash payment, as the nature of their business involves dealing with large sums of cash. Miller says he continues to be about the people's business here at the House of Assembly and also as chairman of BEC. He says unless his government changes their position, nothing is going to change on his side. Clint Watson, ZNS Network News.
Thanks, Clint. Well, health officials denying reports of a TB outbreak at the country's penal institution.
And shock treatment is expected to reap positive results. You're watching the Bahamas Tonight.
This segment of the news is brought to you by Shell Quality Fuels.